So one of the most important pieces for me in writing ambient music is a really good textural loop bed. This is something that in a lot of instances is my foundation for writing ambient and post-rock music. Something that on one hand is interesting and dynamic with some motion and some texture, but doesn't get in the way of the melodies or the chord movement that's happening above it. It's a layer that just kind of glues everything together or starts me often running down an idea. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I approach creating these ambient textural loop layers or beds in my music and why the Strymon Volante has become my favorite looper for this type of thing. Before we dive in here, if you are new to the channel here, if you're finding this video because you're a fan of guitar gear or ambient music, I'm so glad that you found it. I'd love it if you hit subscribe below and hit the like button on this video to help YouTube recommend future videos from me. I'm really excited for the year to come here to explore new gear, to talk about approaches to writing and creating sounds that are inspiring, that can help us kind of keep creating and moving forward in our musical journeys. And so I really appreciate the support along the way here and would love to have you as part of the community and engage with these videos as we go along. So a number of folks will ask me about how I use the Strymon Volante, why I like it so much, and I do think that there's going to be a few videos dedicated to this pedal coming up soon here this year, but today I really want to focus in on the way that I use the Volante and its looper specifically to create ambient textural beds. You can do this in a lot of different ways with a lot of different pedals or combinations of pedals, but to me, the Volante has a unique feature set and ability to create some really cool textures and ambient sounds and loops that can be really useful to add to your ambient compositions, starting with just its character as a tape echo. I've come to really love the voicing of this pedal. I love the fact that you have a few different options in terms of character and voicing with the 3 different types of echo you can have: studio, tape, or drum. It gives just a different sort of nuanced character to the repeats and the echo mode, and also just the way that those can interact and degrade in the looper mode as well. Going off of that, the wear and mechanics controls here again let you further dial in that kind of lo-fi characteristic, that wear or that sort of old texture or character to your echo, and that can again kind of help to create unique and interesting and warm and kind of gritty characteristics to your loop beds. I can already feel myself kind of digging into more of the nuances of this pedal on the whole, so we're going to jump into the looper and just kind of talk about how I use it to create the ambient beds like you heard in the intro, and how you can utilize it if you haven't discovered or uncovered these features in the sound on sound looping in the Volante. First of all, one of the limitations that I've really kind of come to see as a strength or a benefit of the Volante in this context is that you don't really get a ton of visibility or features or control in the looper. In some loopers that are dedicated to being your kind of loop workstation, you get MIDI, you get multiple tracks that you can record and overdub and mix and manage. There's a lot of different features and controls around the incoming audio that you can kind of itemize and keep organized. A Volante doesn't have that for obvious reasons. It's primarily an echo, a delay pedal. But to utilize that limitation, to kind of leverage that for the purposes of creating ambient loop beds, I think is kind of a fun challenge, and I've enjoyed sort of using that and working in that world for these purposes. The first note I'll say is that for these textural ambient loop beds, for me, it's not that critical to have it really specifically time synced to your piece. Part of the beauty is the random or kind of unexpected nature of these loops that just sort of become something that you didn't expect when you're putting audio and notes into it. So a lot of times what I'll do with this sound on sound mode is I'll get a tempo going either in my head or with a metronome if we're going live, and I'll actually start recording a blank or kind of silent stretch of time that matches a certain amount of measures per se. And then after that, I will start to record the sounds and the notes that I want to have into the looper from there. So you kind of start off with the right or close to the right amount of time and or tempo that you'd like to have your loop phrase, and then you can add layers onto it after the fact and know that the start and stop times are about what you were hoping for. This still does kind of leave it open to unexpected starts and stops. The ways that you record things into the looper are still dependent on that sort of restart point of the loop, and so you can get some fun irregularities or unexpected movements and moments in those loops as you start to layer things in. If you're wanting a really precise rhythmic type of a loop, this is just not always that great of an option. But if you're really okay with the kind of textures and layers blending together and creating unique and interesting and unexpected moments, I think it's a really, really cool tool to uncover some of those things. The second thing that I use a ton, and kind of one of the secret weapons of the Volante here and of looping for me when it comes to creating these ambient textural beds, is on the left foot switch here. When you tap it once, you reverse the loop, and that just kind of unlocks these really magical, cool, unexpected movements. Again, you get these sort of swelling type sounds and effects when you reverse something like that. And so it's really a useful tool for me to even take a very simple or kind of melodic or chromatic sounding part and reverse it so that you get, again, some kind of unexpected and more swelly type movement to your loop. I love doing this with swells. I love doing it with slow ascending or descending note patterns because again, when you reverse it, you get the opposite of those sounds or those melody progressions, and you just don't ever quite know exactly how it's going to sound and come out. And so that's a cool way to, again, infuse some character and kind of unique attributes to your loop without making them wildly distracting or overly melodic on that sense. I also love the way that Strymon integrated the echo effect with the looper here. You can run the echo in its settings on the face of it into your looper, so you can kind of have delays, even multi-head delays, running into your looper to start with, so you can get a long ways into some cool ambient loop sounds just with this single pedal. And then two, the speed toggle here is incredibly fun to play with, either on the fly for some fun kind of blips and pitch shifts, or in the studio if you want to add multiple layers of the same loop just at different tempos and at different pitches. It's really fun to go into half mode to get a really deep kind of slow loop. It's fun to pitch it up even momentarily to get those pitch jumps and flutters, or to record a loop layer at double the speed for a really high, kind of higher octave and frequency range texture too, that you can mix and kind of finesse into your piece. Really awesome functionality. I use that live just for fun. I use it in the studio, like I just mentioned, to kind of have multiple layers of the same loop, and it's really useful and really fun. It goes a long way to help kind of fill out your ambient pieces with those different loop bed textures. The last thing I'll mention is the middle foot switch here in the sound on sound mode acts like a tape stop effect, which is really fun. It's cool for different situations if you're ending a song or a phrase, to kind of give this like wind down, like you're actually stopping an old reel-to-reel machine where the tape progressively slows down and the audio gets kind of mangled and shifted in a fun way. I've actually used this so much on this pedal that this foot switch is wore out, so I've got to replace it on this one, which is why you don't see that functionality in the video here. But it's a really fun feature. Again, another cool little special tidbit of usefulness an effect that Strymon included on the Volante, which I think is really cool. So that's kind of an overview of the way that I use Volante for sound on sound looping to create these textural ambient loop beds in a lot of my music. I do it live, which again is the usefulness of this pedal is just sort of doubled when you kind of unlock that for certain songs or settings where we maybe don't have a keys or synth player or don't have tracks or loops. Otherwise, I'll just record a quick textural loop bed like I did in the intro and have that available to turn on or off for transitions in songs or just for a textural bed below everything. And it's really useful. So that's one of the main selling points for me. One of the reasons why the Volante has stayed on the board as my kind of secondary delay and looper. And I think there's just a really fun amount of things that you can do with this sound on sound looper that make Volante still a really compelling option as a looper and certainly as a delay pedal and looper. So I'd love to hear from you if you're using Volante like this, or similarly, drop a note and tell me about what you love about it, what are some of the contexts or ways that you've used it, or if you've got questions about Volante or about how I'm doing some of this looping, drop a note here too and I can engage there. Maybe we'll do some videos in the future and talk more about that. If you want to see more videos specifically on Volante, again, drop those in the comments with recommendations or questions and I can try and get to another video, because I think this is sort of one of the coolest pedals, one of the most used pedals on my board, and I think it's still a really relevant and really fun pedal even a number of years after it's been released. So thanks for watching. Check out Volante, keep making music, and have a good day.